Hello, everybody. We're going to have each of the people who led Breakout Sessions describe a little bit of what they did and how it went. And we want to invite questions or comments from those of you who had been in those sessions. Okay? Thank you.
I don't have any. You want me to ask questions? Wait. What's going on? Oh, just did? Thank you so much. Oh, okay. I just went brain dead. Total recklessness. So we just shot the. It's another expression. We bantered, and we had someone kind of share stuff going on in their life, and the idea was that if you can see their world, your experience as a listener is obviously taken out of this sort of drudgery of rhetoric into a movie. And once you're reflecting back a person's emotions, they start to recognize the universality of humanity. You know, we all start to kind of laugh about what it's like to be human. You know, in our conversation, we discovered that any one of us can have 16 different emotions at the same time that we're batting about in the air, and many of them can be completely contradictory. You know, they just could be the opposite of each other. I have a huge regret about not going back and taking care of my family, and it's okay that I did that. I didn't have any other options, you know, and just seeing that all those things can be occurring at exactly the same time, and it just doesn't mean anything about you, and you can be really playful with all those human sensations. So we were laughing at the end. It was super cool. So that was my little session.
Thank you. Well, it was a delightful gathering. I want to thank everyone who participated for making it so fulfilling. I introduced a tool to go deeper into 3 centers that I'm very interested in with my organization called Heart Path Institute. That being dialoguing our differences within our mind, within our heart, and within our hara. So I've developed a sheet, an inquiry sheet, to assist us in contemplating the messages we're getting from our mind, differentiating those from what we get when we get very quiet and listen to our heart. And then finally, our hara. What's that? Hara. Yes, this is an energy center. It's actually a brain of sorts. There's an organization you can check out. It's called Heart Math Institute, which is exploring the neural activity in these two regions, the heart and the hara. What we know thus far is 35% of the cellular activity here is it's neuronal in nature. And there is traffic going from here to our brain. Very few people are aware of it, and it's my passion to assist us in getting aware of it because it's vital information. As well as here in our heart region, 65% of activity goes from the heart to the brain. And again, Heart Math Institute's doing some incredible research into that. So I developed a sheet where people get to ask a question that they have, any important question about their life, and then to ask that question 3 times of your head, your mind, 3 times of your heart, and 1 time of your hara. And the point here is that if we're not clear within ourselves, how can we expect our outer communications to be clear? We shared some stories. One of them, another form of inquiry that I use is called the work of Byron Katie. Someone brought up recently that, what's happening between Israel and Palestine. And I was reminded that years ago, Katie went to Israel to offer a workshop. She is the developer of a system called The Work. And she was late because she rented a number of buses to go to Palestine and offer anybody who would like to learn this system of conflict resolution to get on the bus and come across to Israel. And thus, when she finally arrived, here are all these Israeli people in this room, and in walk the Palestinians. And she says, okay, you want peace? Let's have it right here, right now. And at the end of this one-day workshop, these people were in tears, hugging, and loving each other. This is the power of inquiry. And that's really what we started today, was just getting clear within myself. What do I want? Why? Where am I going? What's the point of my communication? What was that? Why do I want this? That's great. Why do I want what I say I want? We have resources inside of us that really do change us, not only emotionally and mentally, but physically, that our aging process appears to be directly correlated with the amount of clarity and joy that we have within ourselves. So it was a delight to sit with everyone and have them do the process and come to what I see again and again every day I do this work, is realizations that which lead to really better questions. And just in summary, the whole notion here is that the conflict starts where? Is it really out there? Or is it really in here? And it's so much easier to resolve it in here. And then that out there becomes clear.
How about now? Great. So my session was titled The Wisdom of No Obstacle. And what I tried to do, and I think we were a happy group as we interacted, was to give some overview of basic Buddhist principles and basic Buddhist outlook. I felt obliged really to try to represent what is happening around us here at Namgyal, and to talk a little specifically about Tibetan Buddhism, also known as Vajrayana Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism, but to talk more generally about some practices that all the Buddhist schools, North and South, have in common. And so in Sanskrit, the terms are shamatha and vipassana. And actually, vipassana is very much like what Ravindra was just talking about, alluding to the work of Byron Katie, with kind of radical self-inquiry. So vipassana is sometimes been translated as mindfulness meditation, and the term mindfulness is now very current throughout the West. However, it suggests something more than just being aware of what it is that you're doing, right? Not that that's problematic. I mean, that's a very good way to bring more of a sense of consciousness and more of a sense of personal responsibility to one's actions in the world, to be aware of being aware. So, but vipassana probably more accurately translated from Sanskrit is insight meditation. So it is a way of having insight into habitual patterns of thought. Again, rather similar to what Ravindra was just talking about in the work of Byron Katie. It's quite likely she has been influenced by that, although maybe not. Maybe it just as a philosophical exploration, she has developed her own system independently. The basis, though, for Buddhist practice, and this is how we began the session, I guided people in this shamatha meditation, which it really can be called calm abiding, centeredness, which many spiritual traditions practice. And it's often the reason why people are drawn to meditation. They want to calm down. They want to get to have a softer attitude toward themselves and toward life. And so this is fundamental in Buddhist practice, that you begin by having a sense of your own centeredness, your own being. Of course, the breath is a very natural way to do that, to follow the breath. And as I often remind people, remember that breathing happens unconsciously 24 hours a day. We don't have to make ourselves breathe. On the other hand, we can be conscious of our breathing. And so once we become conscious of our breathing, we have actually accessed another level of our existence. And doors open up to a deep possibility for introspection and self-knowledge. So sitting calmly, collecting oneself, shamatha, breathing practice, we began with that. And I talked a little about really the supreme insight of the historical Buddha, and that's the statue of the historical Buddha right behind us, known as Shakyamuni. And remember, this is not an idol or a god. Buddha means somebody who woke up. And so then what did this person, Shakyamuni, teach? He taught the way he woke up. And so that's the Dharma, or the path, the way things go. And originally he formulated a number of ideas. There's the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path. And for many centuries since then, his followers, many of them enlightened sages, have expounded on that, the Dalai Lama being, of course, the most apt example right here, right now. So, but what did the Buddha find originally? And this is really a hinge and a bit of a paradox in Buddhist practice, and this is really the gateway to the supreme wisdom of no obstacle, that all beings are already, from the very beginning, completely enlightened. So that there is in us an essence that is perfect, complete, and unlimited. And that any of our suffering, any of the obstacles we feel we encounter in the world, whether outside of us or within ourselves, have to do with ignorance about our real condition. So in Tibetan Buddhism, sometimes this is called our real condition, or the real nature of mind. The activity of mind has to do with our perception that we're living in a dualistic state of self and other, because the activity of the mind always sets self against other, like against dislike, attraction against aversion. It has opinions, sometimes totally irrational opinions, nevertheless. But these two are manifestations of this ordinary but rather miraculous aspect of what we are. So the real nature of mind does not negate itself when the activity of mind manifests. That's how come we seem to be here in duality, because it is natural for the activity of mind to be interested in multiplicity and in the multiplicity and the differences in the world. But as we've been talking about all day, that often causes problems when we get hung up on our differences, the multiplicities, ideas, the differences between you and I, etc. So we meditated together in the group. I talked a little bit about Buddhism, and I encouraged people to use some examples from their own lives. I have a feeling we've all been doing that in one way or another today, even as we listen to other people do the work, for example. How does my own mind function in this problematic way? What are my attachments that reify a sense of a separate self, and why does that apparent illusion that I have a separate self seem to suffer a lot, even when I say I don't wish to suffer? So that really is the path in Buddhism, is entering into the way things actually are. There's one translation of the Dharma, the way things go. And that's all the Buddha taught. Here's what I discovered. Here's an outline for how you could practice this. I've given you the path, but you must walk it yourself. That's what the Buddha said. So I tried to encourage people to really get engaged with what's actually happening and discover what this wisdom of no obstacle might be.
So my topic was a little bit more somber than the other folks. The title was Being Trauma-Informed in Our Conversations. And when I found out Judy's topic was about how to set up an kind of a structure or a atmosphere for a dialogue. I knew she's like a master at what she does, and I wasn't going to be able to come close to anything like that. So went with something I'm familiar with and have trained in, and it's about, especially in these days with everything going on in the world, of being realized how much all of us are impacted by trauma, either directly ourselves or people around us, our communities, the world in general. And during the past couple decades, there's been a lot of research on the impacts of trauma on the brain and the body. And during that time, there's been what's developed a framework or a set of principles called trauma-informed care. That I think about it in terms of universal precautions whenever I'm interacting with someone new, of just assuming that somebody has something in their past or maybe in their current life that makes them sensitive to certain stimuli, to certain types of interactions that might trigger difficult emotions from the past that seem to be, they are being triggered in the present, so they get connected now. And when those get triggered in a big way, it makes having conversations and certainly just dialogues more challenging. So the 5 principles are safety, so that's physical and emotional safety, trustworthiness, choice, empowerment, and collaboration. And so the idea is to kind of, when we interact with people, to think about creating, so I use the word create a space, but it's really about how to create an environment for an interpersonal interaction that has those qualities in it when I'm talking with someone, and how I can, in the way I talk with someone, establish that in terms of how I'm talking with them, the questions I ask, the way I interact with them, to help minimize the possibility that whatever might be in their past or in their present situation doesn't get triggered automatically and set off an escalation of emotion in the situation. And so my group was relatively small, so we had time to have some discussion, and so talked about different situations people were dealing with in terms of people in their lives and how they could apply these how they could think about and apply these. So we had one person who is working with refugees, so thinking about the trauma and the challenges somebody's having coming to this country and how you would help create kind of these interactions in terms of providing support for them. One person has a relative who was in the military and seems to be dealing with some of the repercussions of that. Another person has people in their general environment where they live that are struggling with different things. And so the goal was to think about in how to bring these principles to life in the particular situations that we're dealing with, so that you can have conversations with people. And I think coming back to some of what Sue's workshop on listening, a lot of it is about just not stepping in and giving advice. So the principle of choice is about not giving advice, and just giving people choices in the space. Trustworthiness is about just being reliable, really. Creating safety, we can't always create perfect safety for people, but we can be sensitive to what's going on, and how we talk with somebody, how we present, how we show up can make a big difference in terms of how it impacts the other person. Empowerment's about supporting somebody's competency and their sense of their ability to do things. So again, instead of telling somebody, here is what you should do, how you should do it, ask them how they might be able to do it. What have they done in the past? How can they build on their past success? And then collaboration is just that, of working with somebody one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but together, doing it with them instead of for them or telling them how to do it. We had some very fruitful conversations, I think, in terms of exploring those different situations people had and how to bring this to life, and then how to use principle of mindfulness this is important. So an important piece is being aware of what's going on with ourselves, taking care of ourselves, making sure we're in a space to be able to do that, because if we're in a place where we're kind of crispy or not able to support them, that we need to step back and take care of ourselves before we can be in that space. And then also having self-compassion, that we're not going to do it perfectly, right? We're going to have times where we slip and we give somebody advice, or we don't give them a choice. And just remembering that's part of our conditioning and how we usually, the defaults we have and function in the world. And so how can we step back, be compassionate with ourselves to open up and learn a different way of doing things, and then be able to extend that compassion to others.
I want to thank them all, Dina, Sue, Robbie, Peter. Thanks for agreeing to lead breakout sessions for us today. And now what we'd like to do, because of some feedback we got from last fall, is to give people a chance to respond to the experiences they had this afternoon and to what they heard this morning. People who were there in the fall, and that includes a number of you, suggested it would be helpful for a little time at the end of the day to talk about what they had experienced. So if you were in any of these 4 groups, please feel free to discuss what you learned, what surprised you, and what happened, because we couldn't be in all of them.
My name is James. One of the reasons why I was coming here was I had a lot of feedback from relatives, family, loved ones about my communication skills. I'm kind of like an analytical, very direct person, like problem solving and stuff like that. So need to calm that down a little bit. So you guys gave me some really awesome tips. And I'm sorry, what's your name again? Ravi was the last session that I took, just because it was different than everyone else, and I wish I would have been through yours to see the exploration. but I highly recommend to go through Ravi's. If he could give you the worksheets and follow through, I don't know if there's anything. It was very helpful for me as far as opening my mind to see the inner aspect and the progressions. So if you have the opportunity to do that, based on my testimony and experience, I highly suggest it. It was very helpful in a different way. So I just want to be grateful and continue your good work, and communication is huge. You know, when I see the masters here, it's like he says the problems, if you foresee the problems ahead of time, if you solve them by communication, is the best way to solve wars, conflicts, miscommunications. So these are your tools right here. These guys put the work in, so very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to describe their session for us? I was also in Ravi's, and you can probably tell by the fact that we were late that we were having a fascinating time.
What I enjoyed about Ravi's was he's taking on this kind of profound way of picturing a process, and we were invited to consider situations or possible issues that we're dealing with in our life. It has an inherent quality of, this is serious stuff, and it ended with outbursts of laughter, which was just so delightful, and it seemed like a perfect end to that burden of life. And that's an encouragement. That's a real encouragement. So that was a pleasant way of, we got to the deep moment, and you were sort of to write one word that sort of summarized this whole process. And I got the word smile. That was great.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else? I have no idea, really, other than the description, what happened in these other groups. So,
I was in Peter's group, and I really enjoyed the overview of the Namgyal Monastery and the history of Buddhism, and then to have an opportunity to do a little meditation. So anyway, I found, and it was a delightfully warm, cozy room. Thank you.
anyone else care to share or make suggestions for that matter?
I was in Susan's group, and we all ended up at the end laughing as well. I really appreciated the opportunity to, I think I'm messing up with the speakers here, the opportunity to actually practice not having habitual responses, the innate responses, and it was fun to actually try to do it. And it felt safe. It felt like a safe place to try too. So.
Thank you. Mary?
I was in Dina's group, and although we weren't laughing or boisterous in the group, I feel like we shared some really important. Is this good? I felt like we shared some really important tips for each other, and we were able to, as a group, support each other's process. And that was really very helpful and healing.
Anybody else?
I'm in a little bit of a quandary here. I had a wonderful conversation at lunch living in Buddhism and not the religion of Christianity, but maybe an evolution and Christ's relation with that. I'm not going to go into that, but I just wanted to, because there's something about today that lived also in that conversation at lunch. So I was also in Ravi's group. And would you tell me your name again? Yeah, Peter? Yeah, so Peter said some things that were quite strong just now, actually. Quite straightforward and strong in the thoughts and in the emotions. That's what I got. I'm just trying to share that. So we were asked to have an intention. Mine was service. We were asked to formulate a question maybe like a 5-year-old would. How do I serve with my training? And then we asked our head, our mind. And what I was so deeply grateful for is that no part of me was discouraged. No part of what I might experience was bad. That actually they serve. They could serve, right? And we can actually say, oh, good. And then maybe they serve. So my head, we had three answers. Relate with people, play with people, dance with people. And there was a definite progression there in movement. Okay, I didn't expect that. I just said, I don't think anything's coming, but I'd do it anyway and see what happens. In my heart, joy in people, celebrate people, worship them. Okay. Now, hara I had never heard of before. Like a deep center of will, almost, that is connected to higher powers maybe also. That's what I got, right? So, listen from your hara. We are one, become one. And how did that come to you? We said, how does it come out of your hara? Revealed by my true self, by my true self. Okay. Now, I didn't make that up. That's the way it came to me. I accepted and then waited and listened. Why am I saying that? Because that's not... There's something that in what you said, Peter. I accept this. More than that, I embrace it. Why am I saying that? Because it seems like the Buddhist path. But what I hear that I just wanted to, and why I'm even speaking now, all that was just a preparation for why I'm sharing what hit my heart and my being when you shared what you did with your group was why the Buddha for me wasn't the same before and after. The Buddha had, to me, had many lifetimes and was not the same after each lifetime. So there's a deep reason for me to be here. This is not something to escape for me. This is something that's a gift. I just wanted to live that in a little bit. And I won't be the same before and after I'm here. And that there's a point to it. And I really wanted to bring that directly forward because there's a point to conversation. There's a point, not just a point, there's an activity and a growing and a learning and a flowering that can happen to me in conversation. And there's the essence. So I went through and what was the key then at the end? Surrender. And it just hit me so strongly in my heart. We're surrendering, and we have to be strong here to be able to surrender. I can't just give it all up. I have to be here first. Here, now, I surrender to you. How can I serve? Service was my first thing. If I'm not strong. And that's what I get by learning from being here. Learn how to be strong, to give it away, to surrender it. And that's a little different than I heard from you, Peter. I'm not. It was a very short thing. I know that, but it hurt my heart somehow. So I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to their experience in the breakout sessions or across the day?
I guess my question was, after Susan's topic this morning specifically, is I was contemplating the act of listening and comparing that to the everyday conversations that we have, and trying to figure out when is it when people are engaged emotionally that we are really actively listening, as opposed to like when we're both talking about like, hey, let's go on vacation, and you know, sharing similar interests and doing all these in 8-8 that I'm really good at. And you know, so I just speak to that, if you could, a little bit about what that difference is, I guess.
So that's a common question. People are like, when do I use this? It's like, well, if someone says, could you pass the salt? You don't go, oh, you'd really like the salt, wouldn't you? You don't do that. So it's a really good question. You know, the thing about it is that you're going to use it. I even use it when I'm reading an email. You know, I'll like think about the context of the sender, what's going on, for as much as I can glean, kind of what's going on over there where they are before I respond. But you're not going to use it all the time, but it hopefully causes in you a increased capacity to observe others, to get inside other people's world. I actually do it as a game sometimes. I'll be driving down the road and I'll see a house, and I'll just like I imagine what life is like in the house. You know, if it's a place with a big farm, I'm like, oh wow, they've got probably animals in the outbuildings, and I just pretend to be in their life. So it's kind of just a fun thing to do instead of thinking about yourself all the time, which we do naturally. You know, we're pretty myopic creatures. We have to be. We're self-absorbed, and it's just another way. But in conversation, it's particularly useful when someone's got something going on. No question about it. But you can use it in uncharged dialogue too, because sometimes there's stuff underneath that if you pay a little bit of attention, you're like, oh, wait a minute, you're not really asking me that. I know that you've got this other thing going on. It's probably that you're afraid that I'm going to show up at that party, and that's why you're asking, am I going, you know, or whatever, you know, and you can take a little bit of time to imagine over there in their world and get a little more context to your response. So it's just a thing to use, but it is fun to play with, instead of everything being an I-centered world, you know. It gives you another way of looking at life in some respects. So it goes beyond communication. We only had a couple hours together, but it can go way beyond just dialogue, I would assert. But I've been playing with it for a while.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess I'll stand. I was also in Ravi's group, and we were tackling starting with an intention and then a question that emerged from that intention. And so my question was, or the intention was to live in God's love, or live from the experience of God's love, and how would I do that? And what struck me about the whole process that we went through was I was first grasped with the enormity of the question I had posed and intimidated by it. But by the end of the process, I found that there were things that I needed to do on my own as my own kind of personal contemplation, meditation, prayer, etc. And there were things to do in terms of how I interact with other people. And I actually, in the end, felt like, wow, actually there's some pretty surprisingly simple answers. This question that I thought was so big, you know, and that the things that I needed to do out in the community and out in how I interact with other people I could only show up and do those things well if I did not first start with the investments I need to make in my own self and my own meditation and prayer and et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to, again, you know, thank you, Ravi, and just that my biggest takeaway was that even with a very big question or something that seems unachievable, that progress could be made, or at least in terms of how to tackle things that feel so huge and out of reach. So I enjoyed that process, and thank you.
Anyone else? You're all looking like you've had a long day. I hope it was at least a good long day, and that you especially enjoyed the lunch, which is frequently the highlight. And other things too. Yeah, well, yeah. You can thank a lot of Tibetans for that. Okay. All right, good. I hope we will plan more of these, and we will work toward continuing to maintain connections with people and the community. Hope that any connections you might have made here today, you'll also continue. I think it's an especially important time in the world to try and make just these sorts of connections. Thank you. Oh, you want to speak?
There is a group, it meets once a month here in Ithaca, and it's all the different faith traditions, and we would love to welcome you. It is called ACT, Area Congregations Together. I don't know what your title is, if it's a director or whatever, but the chair.
Chairperson.
We want to welcome you.
Area Congregations Together is the organization, and we have something like 12 or 13 different congregations, mostly Christians. We have one Jewish, one Muslim. Let's see. Marjorie Hoffman is the representative for Temple Bethel. Linda is representative for First Congregational Church. Dina Bodner is representative now for Namgyal Monastery. Let's see. And Eric Clay is the representative for Shared Journeys. And I've been the chairperson for the last 3.5 years, and last year, in the middle of last year, I started thinking that we would really like to, expand the operation and reach out and get some more diversity, so where we could do more dialoguing among differences. And that thought that I had fit very nicely with the invitation to people to come to that conference here last September. And I also had a chance last year to go to the 50th anniversary of Foundation of Light, and I'm going to programs there, and Peter and Ira and the chairperson have all been interested in coming to the meetings that Linda is talking about. If there's anybody else from any other, oh look, Rabbi Schiffer, if there's anybody else from any other congregation that would be interested in getting to know us and coming to collaborate with us, we'd be happy to welcome you.
Thank you for that, Jim. Okay, one last thing is that you have a feedback sheet that came with the program, and we'd really appreciate it if you'd take a few minutes here to fill that out. It gives us ideas about how to direct future efforts, and we just really appreciate your feedback. You can leave them on the table. That big table back there.
If you can put your chairs along the walls, we need to put the room back. Yeah, so if the wall is full, start stacking them. Thank you.